Greetings to you once again, people of God, and just a recap of what we covered last time before I present to you today's word. Last time we were focusing on the sexual demons, and in the subtopic we were focusing on the spiritual husbands and wives, anti-marriage spirits, operations. And I explained to you about the woman at the well, the woman who had 5 husbands, and even the one husband that she had at home was not her rightfully owned husband. And I explained that this was a spiritual operating husband according to what Jesus had prophesied and revealed to her in spirit. And I took you to part 2, where we were talking about the same spiritual husbands and wives, but this time we're now talking about the adulterous spiritual husbands and wives. And I explained the issue of 3 brothers who were Onan, and Sheila, the 3 brothers who were given one wife, and they suffered 3 similar challenges. Of course, we didn't explain about the last born was Sheila, but it was very certain and obvious that he also faced the similar challenge that his other 2 brothers faced on one wife, which was obvious that it was no longer an issue of the physical wife, the wife in the physical, but a spiritual hiding wife that claimed the death of the first 2 brothers. And today, on the same series of sexual demons, which is now part 3, we want to focus on the sexual demons, and inside the subtopic we want to focus at what is called the fornicating seducing spirits. The fornicating seducing spirits. And for us to understand more on this one, let's go into scriptures, into one of the greatest books in the Holy Bible, Revelations chapter 17 verse 1. And in Revelation chapter 17 verse 1 it reads, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me," this is John who is narratively writing the vision that he saw in the spirit. "And one of the angels came to me, saying, Come and see. And he showed me the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." I don't think some of you are going to understand this in the spiritual, but in the physical you do understand that they are prostitutes or they are whores. That definition, you all know it in the physical, but when that definition is said to you in the spiritual, it becomes very confusing, because almost every one of you believe that a whore or a prostitute should be defined by her works in the physical, which include sexual activities. But this is a vision that John is being shown, and in the vision is being shown a whore. But in the spirit, this is all happening in the spirit, and the vision that John is being shown there is in the spirit, where none of us can ever expect any act like fornication to be mentioned. But a whore is being defined in the spirit, not in the physical, meaning that whatever has caused a certain spirit to be defined like that in the realms of the firmament, it means it has also the capacity to anoint one in the physical to become a whore or a prostitute in the physical. So it all begins in the spiritual, like I explained yesterday, that spiritual husbands and wives, they are in the spirit. And this one is a wife, a female characteristic that has been seen in the spirit. Because some of you thought that sex is defined not only in the physical, but in the spirit. But I'll tell you, it begins in the spirit, and then it is confirmed in the physical. And in Revelation chapter 17 verse 2, I'll show you with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And the description that has been given there is giving the description of even kings, not just ordinary people that have committed fornication with her and the inhabitants of the earth. But the description that has been shown there is not of many women, but just one woman in the spirit, which is a chief demon of harlotry, a chief demon of harlotry, a chief demon of fornication, which has been identified as a woman that was sitting on many waters, meaning many multitudes in the spirit, who is the mother of all harlotry in the spirit, who influences. It means this spirit has got influence to send subordinates of spiritual wives into women, and those spiritual wives, once they enter into female custodians' bodies, they are then influenced to cause lust and fornication into male bodies on the earthly realm. So there is no way that one spirit could have fornication with the kings and the inhabitants of the earth without having subordinates, meaning that spirits of lust and the other spirits of fornication that are assigned into different bodies to lure the imaginations of male minds, and they are lured into fornication, into the practical commitment of fornication. And in Revelation chapter 17 verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. This was a woman that was seen in the spirit by John. Like I said, sex is not only defined in the physical, but in the spiritual. And John is able to identify that this was a woman that was seen in the spirit. Just like there is an identification or a criteria or a category of being able to distinguish between a spiritual husband and a spiritual wife. Someone asked me, how do you distinguish the difference between a spiritual wife and a spiritual husband in the spirit? Once you become spiritual, you will be able to distinguish the two. And this is what John was able to do. He was able to see that this was a woman that was seen in the spirit. And in that vision, John saw the woman sitting upon a scarlet colored beast. A colored beast, it means she was sitting on some powerful system. The beast that represents the world system, she was sitting on some powerful system, which is the beast, which is explained later on by John in Revelation chapter 13, which is not the focus today, but the beast representing a system full of names of blasphemy. There should be a gospel of blasphemy in everything that has been assigned by Lucifer the devil. A gospel or a word that is meant to lead many astray, just to seduce many, to convince many, to be part of a system that is either corrupt or a system that is defiled already. And having 7 heads and 10 horns, the 7 heads represent the authorities in 7 different tribes. John the Revelator in the beginning is preaching to 7 churches. It means the 7, it represents the 4 corners of the earth, the 7 tribes that have been chosen also by God. It has authority in all those 7 tribes, and 10 horns meaning the 10 continents under the sun. If you count those 10 continents and they don't add up to 10, it means you did not count properly. And in Revelation chapter 17 verse 4, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand. All that has been explained above there is makeup, because some of you believe that makeup is just a physical description. It's not just a physical description. Every makeup that you see that is done by any woman, whether it's a decent makeup or it's a makeup that is indecent, or a makeup whether that looks bright, whatever makeup it is, it begins in the spirit. And meaning that any makeup that is designed to lure or to seduce male people, it has been designed also in the spirit. Is explained that she had precious stones and pearls, that is makeup, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. That was the record of her evil in the spirit and the filthiness of her fornication. And in Revelation chapter 17 verse 5, John saw, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now, in those scriptures that I just read to you, we need to understand the filthiness of her fornication, the one which is also the wine that he gave to the saints of God to be drunk of her fornication. Because in Revelations it reads, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. This was John that wondered with great admiration. And in other versions it says, he marveled, meaning that also in the spirit, there is lust, that lust is capable of consuming a certain body, even if one is operating in the spirit. It doesn't matter one is operating in the spirit, but lust that influences or seduces one into fornication is able to consume even one that is operating in the spirit. This is why we now have a record of many prophets that are involved in adulterous or fornicating activities. But still, because you love them, you defend them, because you operate in the carnality. Now, for us to understand more also on this dimension of spirits that are seducing and they use fornication under the mystery woman that we have explained, let's go to Genesis chapter 19 verse 30. And in Genesis chapter 19 verse 30, this is after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And we understand that after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the one that was spared was Lot, who was Abraham's nephew. And Lot is spared even also by angels in Sodom and Gomorrah. And he is allowed a passage to walk out of Sodom and Gomorrah with his wife and the two daughters. And we know what happened on the way, that the wife looked back and she changed into a pillar of salt. So the scripture that I'm going to read here is after those events, which are in Genesis chapter 19 verse 30. And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his two daughters. This is after the death of the wife who had changed into a pillar of salt. And the reason why the wife has changed into a pillar of salt is because there was also a spirit inside the wife of Lot, which caused her not to survive the wrath of Sodom and Gomorrah, meaning that she was part of Sodom and Gomorrah. But because spirits, they operate in the spirit, even after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the spirits are not distracted. What God merely distracted there was a physical city, not a spiritual city, or the spiritual operations of these spirits. Remember, I explained to you about the mystery woman, the great mother, who is the mother of all harlotry. And I said she has got subordinates. And there we see the wife of Lot being changed into a pillar of salt. And Lot moves into another place of hiding, and Lot is now staying with his two daughters. And in Genesis chapter 19, verse 31, Genesis chapter 19, verse 31, and the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come unto us after the manner of all earth. These are the two daughters of Lot after Sodom and Gomorrah has been distracted. And we know why Sodom and Gomorrah were distracted is because of the evil that was being committed in that city, which displeased God. And God spared this family so that they go and start another family. And Lot is spared because of Abraham, not because of righteousness. This is the same thing, people, that got Noah spared. Noah got spared because he was chosen, just like Abraham was chosen. All these men that were spared, they were not spared because they were righteous or they were holy. Because the same Noah that was spared is the same Noah that later on started drinking wine. The same wine that I explained earlier on, that the woman, the mystery woman, causes them to fornicate and make them drunk with the wine of her fornication. And what caused evil to continue in the generation of Noah, even after the floods had wiped everyone, was a sin that happened after Noah had drank wine. And in this sin now, the firstborn of Lot was the elder daughter, because he had two daughters. She decided that the father was now old, and there was no man on earth that was left to enter into them. And therefore, she planned that they sleep with their father. The same spirit that was inside the mother, that got the mother killed, and she failed to escape the wrath of Sodom and Gomorrah, is now entered into the girl child. The same spirit that I explained of fornication that was seen by John. These are the subordinates that I was explaining about. And there should be a wife that should be married to Lot, but there is none. So there is going to be an acting wife in the spirit that should enter into one of the daughters, a spiritual wife that should enter into one of the daughters, so that she can have the bravery to sleep with their father. But for that to happen, let's understand Genesis chapter 19, verse 32. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. The same wine that has been explained in Revelation chapter 17, that they were made drunk with the wine of their fornication. The same wine that I explained that all sins that caused evil to continue after the floods was that Noah drank wine and he lay in the tent uncovered. And we understand what it means to say he lay in the tent uncovered. It means he was exposed to a certain sin. This is the same strategy again that was used on Lot. He was made to drink wine for a certain dimension of a sinful activity to continue again, even after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is a common sin that I have already explained. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. Do you hear the reasonable excuse that has been given there? So that we may preserve the seed of our father. But in the spirit, what is going to be preserved there is not just a seed, but the continuous seed of sin, which is the seed of the serpent. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. The firstborn was able to enter into where her father was lying, and she slept with the father that first night. And whatever wine that was given to Lot, which caused Lot not to know that he was sleeping with her daughters, is not just ordinary wine, but the wine that makes one drunk and commits fornication. We cannot believe that one can be drunk to the extent that he can lie with his daughters. But this is evident that the wine that is being talked about here is the drunkenness that is caused inside the mind of someone. And that drunkenness is the seduction, the level of seduction that is used to enslave or to captivate the mind and influence one into the spiritual, practical activity of sexual immorality. And this is where the activation of a sexual demon comes into play, people. Consuming even the body of a saint who was Lot. Just like it consumed the body of a saint who was Noah, and it was explained to you in parable that he lay in the tent and uncovered. And this is the same thing. Lot lay there in the tent uncovered, and the spiritual wife entered into one of the daughters, the same spiritual wife that was inside Lot's wife, which caused the death of Lot's wife in the wrath of Sodom and Gomorrah. It entered into the firstborn daughter, and Lot sleeps with that same spiritual wife. But what has changed here is just a physical body, and the operations haven't changed. And it came to pass on the next day that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. If you still believe that this is wine that is being used against Lot so that he can continue sleeping with his daughters, then you don't understand the spiritual. This is not wine, people. This is a higher representation or a significance of a seducing spirit of fornication that is being signified by the wine there, just as I explained in Revelation 17. And the younger also went inside where her father was lying uncovered, and she slept with the father again. The same spirit again, the same spiritual wife entered into the younger daughter, and Lot once again, he slept with both of her daughters on 2 different nights. So, people of God, I want you to understand that fornication in the spirit is a spirit that entertains also in the physical, but it has to enter inside different bodies to cause seductions and influence fornication. But a major sexual demon that I have been explaining from part 1, 2, and 3 right now is the one that then comes into play and influences fornication using different physical bodies. I hope someone is now understanding from where I've started in part 1, part 2, and 3. Have a blessed day.